Welcome back everyone. Drop a comment and let me know where you are watching from. This community spans the whole world, and that never gets old. Welcome hook, a second fresh dramatic re-entry line after the welcome. Different every time, no repeats, ever, across any of the three elements. Now here is the full rewrite. Something broke open on Oak Island today that has not been open since before the United States of America existed. Not a theory, not a lead, not one of the tantalizing fragments that this island has been dispensing to desperate searchers for over 2 centuries, like a dealer who never lets anyone walk away clean, but never lets anyone walk away with enough either. Something physical, something built, something that has been sitting in the dark beneath 40,000 pounds of rock in Lot 8 since a time when the maps of this part of the world were still being argued over by empires that no longer exist. And the team found it. After everything this island has taken, the money, the years, the health, the relationships, the lives of 6 young men whose names are carved into the history of this search, the Fellowship of Oak Island went to Lot 8 with a crane and a cable, and the specific stubborn refusal to accept that this island does not have an answer, and they pulled back a 40,000 pound boulder and found something underneath it that should not be there. A man-made feature, sealed from above, pointing downward into the dark. Do not go anywhere, because the story of what this means and what happens next starts right now. Welcome back everyone. Drop a comment and let me know where you are watching from. This community spans the whole world, and that never gets old. And if you have been watching this show through every flooded shaft and every collapsed tunnel and every season that ended with the island still winning, tonight is the night you stayed for, because the boulder is gone, the seal is broken, and what the team found underneath 40,000 pounds of deliberately placed Nova Scotia granite is not circumstantial, not ambiguous, and not something that cautious language can soften into anything less than what it is. It is a man-made feature in Lot 8, and it appears to be hiding a shaft. 230 years of the most relentless, expensive, heartbreaking treasure hunt in recorded history just found its most significant physical evidence, and the team standing over it in the mud and the salt wind of a Nova Scotia morning is not celebrating. They are not celebrating because they know this island, they know what it gives, and they know what it takes, and they know that the distance between finding an entrance and reaching what is inside it is exactly where Oak Island does its worst work. But the entrance is real, and nothing that comes next can change that. For perspective, because perspective is not optional when the numbers are this large, consider what 40,000 pounds actually represents in the physical world. A fully loaded school bus weighs approximately 15,000 pounds. The boulder that has been sitting over this feature in Lot 8 outweighed nearly 3 of them, not stacked side by side. Nearly 3 school buses, fully loaded, combined into a single mass of Nova Scotia granite that has been sitting in one specific location in Lot 8 with a precision and a permanence that geology alone cannot explain. Because geology did not put it there, someone did, whether they moved it into position or built around an existing formation or chose this specific boulder from among every other rock on this island for its size and its weight and its effectiveness as a seal. The intent is the same, the result is the same, a 40,000 pound lock on a feature that someone needed locked, placed with the kind of care and commitment that only comes from knowing exactly what is below and exactly what it would mean for the wrong people to find it. The crane operators who spent weeks planning this lift and hours executing it are professionals. They move large and difficult things for a living. They calculate load tolerances and failure points and ground stability and a dozen other variables that most people never think about. And they do it routinely and without drama because that is their job. They described this lift differently, not because of the technical complexity, though the complexity was genuine and the margin for error was narrow, but because of what settled over the site the moment the boulder broke free of the earth, the way the team fell silent, the way the silence itself seemed to have weight and history, as if it had been compressed into the space beneath that rock for a very long time and had finally been released. When a 40,000 pound boulder is lifted from the ground it has covered, what should be underneath it is ordinary, compacted soil, fragmented rock, the unremarkable subsurface of a small island off the coast of Nova Scotia, minding its own geological business across centuries of tide and weather and freeze and thaw. What should not be there, what has no natural mechanism for being there, is a feature with edges that hold under measurement, with angles that do not change with the light or the observer or the desperate hope of people who have been looking for a long time, with the clear, documented, instrument-confirmed signature of deliberate human construction. So why is the team standing over exactly that? Because Oak Island has never been ordinary ground, and today, for the first time in over 2 centuries of searching, the ground is finally admitting it. The word that travels through the fellowship in a low and urgent and barely contained current is man-made, not interesting, not anomalous, not a geological curiosity worth flagging for follow-up study. Man-made, one word, and in the context of Lot 8, with the boulder displaced, and the crane still warm, and every instrument on site confirming what every pair of eyes is already seeing, that one word carries the full accumulated weight of 230 years of searching, because man-made does not mean coincidence. Man-made does not mean erosion producing shapes that resemble deliberate construction from a certain charitable angle. Man-made means that someone stood in this location with tools and intention and built something, and then concealed that something with the most permanent, most effective, most brutally simple seal they could devise, 40,000 pounds of rock. What the feature appears to conceal is a shaft, or the entrance to a tunnel, a constructed point of access leading downward into whatever network of underground architecture the team has spent years trying to understand from above, trying to reach from the sides, trying to prove was real against the persistent skepticism of people who had not stood on this island and felt what it feels like to know that the evidence is there, even when the evidence will not come forward. The evidence has come forward. If this is a real entrance, and every measurement, every instrument, every trained eye on site is saying that it is, then the engineering sophistication of whoever built this place is no longer a matter of debate. It is confirmed in the earth, in Lot 8, on a Tuesday morning in Nova Scotia, with the wind off the Atlantic, and the crane still running and 6 men standing around a hole in the ground that should not exist and does. Someone built this, someone sealed it, someone placed 40,000 pounds of rock over it, and walked away from this island without leaving a clear record of who they were, what they left, or why they were so certain that what they hid needed to stay hidden forever. The forever just ended. Stop and hold that thought for a moment, really hold it, because the logistics of what the team is now standing over are not just impressive, they are frightening in their implications. Moving 40,000 pounds of stone to a precise location is not a quiet operation. It does not happen with a small crew working quickly and leaving no trace. It requires equipment that did not come cheap in any era. It requires organized labor, multiple people, working in coordination, over an extended period of time, in a location remote enough that the work could proceed, without drawing the kind of attention that would have made concealment impossible. And then it requires silence, not just the silence of people who agreed to keep a secret and did their best, the absolute, permanent, grave-sealed silence of an operation that left no reliable documentary trail, no first-hand account, no confession or deathbed disclosure or archive discovery that has ever definitively answered the most basic questions about who came to this island and what they left here. That silence was not accidental. It was maintained with the same discipline and the same resources and the same ruthless attention to consequence that placed the boulder in the first place. History is full of hidden things, small things, portable things, objects of value tucked into walls or buried in gardens or sealed in containers designed to survive a generation or two until the person who hid them or their descendants could safely retrieve them. Nobody seals something under 40,000 pounds of rock for a generation or two. Nobody puts that kind of permanence into a hiding place unless what they are protecting is significant enough to justify it and the threat of its discovery is real enough to demand it, unless the calculation, made by serious people with serious resources and a serious understanding of what was at stake, was that ordinary concealment was not enough, that the only adequate protection was the kind that would require extraordinary means to defeat. It took a crane, it took modern engineering, it took 230 years of accumulated knowledge about this island and what it contains and where the features are located. It took the Lagina brothers and the Fellowship of Oak Island refusing to stop, and it worked. The question that nobody is saying out loud in Lot 8 right now, the one that sits under every other thought like the shaft sits under the feature, is not what is down there. It is what were they so afraid of that they did this? What were the stakes? What did they know about what they were hiding, and about the world they were hiding it from, that made 40,000 pounds of rock feel like a reasonable precaution? It would not be Oak Island if the discovery arrived without the island immediately reminding everyone of who is in charge. It never does. Not once in the recorded history of this search has a breakthrough come without the island attaching conditions. Even now, with the feature exposed, and the instruments confirming what the eyes are seeing, and the whole long arc of this search bending toward resolution for the first time in living memory, the complications are already arriving. Water, the perpetual, maddening, engineered-seeming water that has defeated every serious excavation attempt in the history of this island, that floods tunnels and collapses shafts and turns solid ground into something that swallows equipment and ambition with equal indifference. Soil stability around the exposed feature is a concern. The age of what lies below is a concern. The very act of opening something that has been sealed for this long introduces variables that the most careful planning cannot fully anticipate. Whatever is down there has been in conditions of consistent darkness and pressure and isolation for potentially hundreds of years. The act of changing those conditions, of introducing air and light and human hands to a space that has had none of those things, carries risks that the team understands and takes seriously. Because this team is not the team that came before them, the searchers who came before, and there were many, across many generations, some of them brilliant, and some of them reckless, and most of them some combination of both, made mistakes that cost this search decades. They flooded tunnels that might otherwise have been accessible. They destabilized shafts that might otherwise have held. They moved fast because the prize felt close and paid prices for that speed that subsequent generations are still accounting for. The Fellowship does not move fast. Every measurement is taken before anything is touched. Every observation is documented before the next step is decided. Every expert on site is consulted before any action is taken that cannot be undone. Because this team has read the history and understood its lessons in a way that love of the find sometimes makes difficult, and they are not going to be the generation that got to the entrance and destroyed what was inside it through impatience. Not after everything it took to get here, not with whatever is waiting just below. The records are incomplete. They are always incomplete when it comes to Oak Island. The incompleteness is part of the design, but fragments have always existed for those patient enough to find them and careful enough to understand what they mean. There are accounts from the 18th and 19th centuries of individuals who came to this island with no stated purpose and left without explanation. Not diggers, not treasure hunters in the recognizable sense, observers, people who walked specific routes across the island, paused at specific locations, satisfied themselves that something remained as it had been left, and departed without speaking about what they were doing or why, as if they already knew, as if their only task was to verify that the seal was holding and the secret was intact. There are maps with markings that no official surveyor ever explained and no geological feature ever accounted for. There are references in documents held in archives on more than one continent to a concealment of extraordinary significance, to a seal that must not be broken, to work that was done at great cost and must be respected at equal cost. The seal is broken, the work has been undone, and whatever those long-dead engineers and guardians and keepers of this secret feared would happen when that day came, it is happening, in the mud and the cold air of Lot 8, in the hands of a fellowship that was told this was impossible and decided that impossible was not a reason to stop. Season 13 of The Curse of Oak Island has been building to this. Every episode, every excavation, every fragment recovered from the deep earth of this island has been pointing here without knowing it. And now the biggest secret this island has ever kept is not a secret anymore. It has edges and angles and the confirmed signature of deliberate human construction and a shaft leading downward into the dark that the team is about to follow. The crane is still. The chains lie slack in the trampled Lot 8 grass. The boulder sits displaced. 40,000 pounds of the most effective concealment device in the history of this search, retired now, its purpose defeated, its vigil finally and permanently over. In the earth the feature is open. It does not explain itself. It does not offer the team a map or a manifest or any indication of what waits below. It simply exists the way it has always existed, through every failed excavation and every season that ended without resolution and every year that passed with the secret intact and the boulder in place and the darkness below undisturbed. Patient, present, no longer sealed, the fellowship stands at the edge of it. Lagina looks down into it with the expression of a man who has spent years of his life in pursuit of exactly this moment and is now discovering that the moment itself is bigger and stranger and more weighted with consequence than any amount of anticipation could have prepared him for. Whatever is below will be found. It will be documented and dated and analyzed and argued over and eventually understood in a way that fits it into the larger story of this island and the people who built what is buried here. It will become part of the historical record in a way that 230 years of searching never quite managed to achieve. But right now it is not history. Right now it is the wind off the Atlantic and the still crane and the open dark and the quiet that has settled over Lot 8 like something that was always going to settle here eventually, waiting only for the boulder to be gone and the feature to be open and the team to be standing at the edge of it looking down. Oak Island Season 13 has finally cracked the biggest secret, and the answer, the real answer, the one that 2 centuries of searchers gave everything to find, is directly below where the fellowship is standing right now. What comes next will change everything. You do not want to miss it.